So we all want to learn a language fast, so we want to do it as quickly as possible without, any of the clickbait rubbish. And one of the best ways I've found to actually improve how you learn a language and how quickly you learn a language is by setting better goals, because most people just set absolutely terrible goals, and what that results in is low effort, low time investment, low optimization, and then in fact they don't learn a language particularly fast at all. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Here is basically what's going on at the moment, and I'm going to explain how this is effectively stalling your ability to learn languages. So right now you have some kind of desire, which is to learn a language. Maybe it's to learn Spanish for your family, maybe it's to learn Norwegian so you can travel there and work there. I don't know. It could be anything, but you have some kind of desire. Then, because you have some kind of desire, you take action, which is you invest time into tasks. Examples of tasks might be like flashcards or anything that you might think would help you learn a language. Those tasks provide an ROI in that they give a return on the investment. They help you become better at the language, you improve in the language, and then your desire becomes true. Now, the problem with this is that this is kind of an idealistic this is us being idealistic on how it would go. You have a desire, you do these things, you become proficient in the language. Unfortunately, here is what actually happens, which is because you're running purely on desire, the fact that you kind of want to learn a language, what actually happens is you work towards the level of your most advanced purpose, right? So at this point in time, your most advanced purpose is you simply have a desire to learn a language. You might think that you've made goals and stuff in the language. I guarantee you haven't, and that's what we'll talk about on the next slide. But right now, your most advanced purpose is the fact that you have a desire to learn a language. And what happens is anytime you have a lapse in desire, a lapse in being motivated to learn, or any number of things, it's very easy to get sidetracked, which means you no longer act, you no longer get an ROI, you no longer improve in the language, and your desire effectively won't become true because you're not actually doing enough stuff. And a key reason for that is low dopamine in tasks, but we'll save that for another video, which I'll make soon, a video on dopamine. So how do we actually solve this problem of your desire being the most advanced goal and effectively stopping you from learning a language? The solution, and the thing I think everyone can improve in, myself included, is to set actual sophisticated goals the right way. So, if we have a desire to learn a language, that's great, that's not a bad thing. But what we need to do is set a more advanced goal. So if we have the desire to, for example, learn Italian because we have a friend who speaks Italian and we like to be able to talk to him and his family and holiday there, and maybe a few other reasons as well, maybe pull Italian girls, I don't know, whatever you want to learn a language for, really. But we have this desire, and so instead of just starting to learn Italian, which, don't get me wrong, that's a good thing. If you have the desire to learn a language, starting is fantastic. But what we're going to do now, because we know more and we're more advanced, is we're going to actually set a proper goal. And the reason setting a goal is important is because it effectively allows you to work through periods of low motivation, lapses in desire, kind of ADHD, changing your mind on what you need to do to learn a language, etc. A goal is effectively a future objective we are working to achieve. And when I show you how to set smart goals in a second, you'll understand completely. But effectively, a goal is better than simply desire on its own, because a goal is a more advanced purpose. And when we have a more advanced purpose, it's much easier to combat low dopamine, lapses in short-term motivation, etc. So, how do we actually set better goals? The first thing I want you to do is actually get your desire out onto paper, because it's very rare that people have only one reason why they want to learn a language. It's generally a whole host of reasons, a lot of them being largely emotional. So an example of an emotional reason might be ego, for example. You just want to be able to speak another language because you think it's cool and it will get you respect, which is totally true, and that's fine as well. So the thing about these emotional things is that they're purely emotional reasons, and as soon as you have a lapse in motivation, that can kill a lot of your emotional reasons, which is why I think it's really good to put them all onto paper. So what we're going to do right now is grab a pen and paper. It could be your language learning journal, it could be a random piece of paper, I don't care, and you're literally just going to write out all of the reasons that you want to learn a language, all the things that you want to have that you'll get as a result of learning a language, etc. So right now we've got you. Just draw you as a stick figure in the middle of the page, a bunch of lines coming from you, and just reasons as to why you want to learn a language. You're basically picture journaling about your motivation. So a few different examples of reasons could be, family, friends, travel. freedom, intelligence, self-improvement, ego, to win a bet because you have a role model who does it. It could be even be not. It could be like Ollie Richards or someone, or it could be a it could be a fictional role model as well. Maybe even someone like James Bond. You just think that's cool. He can speak a bunch of languages. Write that down. Nobody else is looking at this, and nobody's a saint. It could be materialism. You want to live in another country because you think that country's cool and being able to speak that language would be cool and you want that lifestyle, etc. It doesn't even have to be realistic things that you realistically do. Just write anything out onto paper and I promise you it will help you. And nobody's a saint, nobody's reading this, unless you want to post it, but don't do that. If you want to talk about it, you're welcome to jump in the Discord, which I have a link below. But yeah, this is extremely powerful to do because when a lot of your desire is purely emotional, as I said before, immediately when you get a lapse in motivation, it can kill any emotional desire you might have to learn a language. So now that we've written it out, this is effectively the first step to setting more advanced goals. Now we're actually going to set long-term goals that are going to basically keep us anchored when we don't feel like language learning. So we're going to do what's called the SMART goal system, which is basically, it's an acronym, SMART, for a bunch of different things. And this is how we're going to set our goal effectively in the language we're learning. And don't worry, because goals can be updated and they can be changed over time. That's completely fine and it's good. Your goals should evolve over time, but we're just going to start with some rough goal. So a lot of people do like to take this extremely seriously and put a time cap and stuff on. That's a terrible idea because you don't know how long it will take you to learn a language. You're much better off setting a short-term time frame, like for example doing this study in this week. But yeah, so the first thing you need to do is be specific. So what do you want? Now you can flip the page over. If you've got space, you can keep going. For example, what do you actually want? So you could write, for example, okay, fluency in Norwegian, or want to be conversational in Norwegian, or I want to learn the basics in French, Spanish, and Italian because I think those are 3 cool languages. Anything like that, just be specific. And once you've written something like learn the basics, write a little bit about what you might be able to do. So if you were this character that could speak the basics in French, Spanish, and Italian, you could basically travel in those countries and be able to read maybe street signs and be able to ask for stuff and that kind of thing. Nothing too fancy, but just kind of get into the mood of it. Talk about what you might do. You can fill up a whole page with this goal setting if you want. And the next thing we're going to do is make sure it's measurable. Measurable is kind of like a progress bar. So how do you know how close you are to achieving your goal? How do you know when you've achieved your goal? This should kind of follow on from specific. So if you're specific about what you want to achieve, for example, fluency in Danish, you want to be able to go around Denmark, talk to people. You want to be so fluent that you could marry someone from Denmark effectively. That would be a very specific, that would certainly be measurable because you're going to have to be extremely advanced. You know, if you're talking to Danish people and you don't understand, even 20% of what they're saying, or even that's way too much, sorry, even like 5% of what they're saying, you need to probably improve because you set yourself, that's a very high goal, by the way. But yeah, that would be an example. The next thing is achievable. Of course, this is basically more of a tick or cross thing. Any language learning goal is achievable if you put in the effort. The thing I think you should consider here is this kind of reasonable for you to do? So if you say, for example, fluency in Japanese and you don't even really want to do that, I think you should probably reflect upon it more because you're kind of setting yourself a goal that you're going to bow out of. And also, if you set yourself a goal like I want to be fluent in 3 languages in 2 weeks, that's a ridiculous example, but yeah, that's obviously something that's just not going to happen, and it's purely not achievable. So for this step, I just take a look at your goals and see, yeah, if I do put in effort, could I learn this? And the answer is probably yes. You might have some limiting beliefs, but I do think you probably could, unless you set yourself a stupid goal. Again, if you want to check, you're welcome to join the Discord server, and I can personally talk to you and help you with that. But we'll move on from achievable just because it's a little bit difficult to kind of go into, particularly when you've never learnt a language before. Relevant is basically, is it in line with your desire? Very simple example. If you want to live in Japan and you decide to learn French, that is a very clear example of it not being in line with your desire. So actually unpack your desire. It could be, you want to live in this country, etc. Make sure, you'd be surprised, but make sure the language you're trying to learn is actually in line with your desire, or you're going to be wasting time and being unfulfilled. And the final thing I will say is time bound. Don't say you want to learn a language within a year. You can write that you'd like to do that, but if you try and set that as a goal, you will most likely be disappointed because you're probably not going to reach that level within a year. Language learning is quite a it's quite a difficult thing. So yeah, potentially you can set yourself a goal of I'm going to study an hour or 2 a week to start with, and then you can bump it up over time. And yeah, your goals should change over time. That's completely normal. And I do want you to also understand the difference between input and output goals. So an input goal is, for example, I'm going to study this amount of time. It's what you're putting in. You're setting a target for how much effort or time you're going to invest. An output goal is what you're going to receive. So for example, fluency or whatever level in the language in this amount of time. These are different because one of them you have control over how much effort you're putting in, and the other is what you're expecting to receive, but there is some degree of unpredictability with it. So I would highly recommend you set an input goal, for example, to study 3 hours a week as a beginner or whatever like that. And as you get more advanced, you can set more difficult goals. Like for example, I want to be able to learn this vocab group within this 2-week period. And yeah, you can basically, once you get more advanced, you can get an eye for what kind of goals you can set. But yeah, that is basically the video, guys. I don't believe I have anything else. If you do really want to take language learning to the next level, you can definitely check out the Language Learning Accelerator in the description below, and you can email me as well if you'd like to talk about language learning. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I do hope that was useful for you.